Hello there friends, it's Ashley here from the Loopy Lamb and theloopylamb.com, and I'm back again this week with another part of our Amigurumi Advent Calendar Crochet Along. And this week we're going to be making some cute little boots for our dolls. Now the pattern will tell you to use black yarn, but feel free to use whatever color you'd like. And today I'm going to be using this denim blue color of Bravo worsted weight from We Crochet, just because it's going to be much easier to see on the camera than if I were trying to use a darker color like black. So you're going to need your worsted weight yarn in your preferred color, a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle. You're going to need two 9mm buttons, a coordinated colored sewing thread and needle, and I'm going to be using a 3.5mm or E crochet hook, but use whatever crochet hook that you need in order to obtain the gauge given in the pattern. So I'm going to clear this away, and if you're ready to get started, please hit that like button and please consider subscribing to this channel. All right, so we are ready to start with our doll boots. And to do that, we've got our worsted weight yarn, we've got our E or 3.5mm hook, and we're going to start by creating a magic circle. And I'm going to do this relatively quickly. If you want to see a full tutorial in slow motion of this technique, you can see that here on the channel, and I'll add a little link to that for you here. And then for round one, we're going to place 6 single crochets into the magic ring. And then we're going to pull the tail on our ring and tighten it to close. Now, I neglected to mention in the materials that you'll need at the beginning is that you will need a stitch marker, and I do apologize about that. I had gotten just kind of scooted off to the side here, but you're going to need a stitch marker because we're working this part of the project in continuous rounds. So you needed to mark the first stitch of each round so that way you know where you're at. So now that we're tightened, we've got our stitch marker ready, we're going to start with round 2. And to do that, we're going to place a single crochet increase into each stitch around. Now, a single crochet increase is 2 stitches into each stitch. So we're going to insert our hook under both loops of that first stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then we're going to yarn over and pull through 2. And that's our first single crochet. We're going to mark that with our stitch marker. And then we're going to go back into that same stitch and we're going to work a second single crochet. And that is your single crochet increase completed. So we're going to place 2 single crochets into every stitch around. At the end of this round, you should have 12 single crochets. And now that we have 12 single crochets, we're going to move on to round 3. To start with round 3, we're going to move that stitch marker out of the way and we're going to place 1 single crochet into that first stitch. And we're going to move up our stitch marker. Then we're going to place a single crochet increase into the next stitch. And again, that's 2 single crochets into the same stitch. Then we're going to place 1 single crochet into the next stitch and 2 single crochets into the next. And that is our pattern we're going to repeat around for this round. We're going to do 1 single crochet in the first stitch and a single crochet increase or 2 single crochets into the next stitch. At the end of this round, we should have 18 stitches. And now we are ready to start with round 4. For round 4, we're going to place 1 single crochet into the first stitch. Don't forget to move up your stitch marker there. And then we're going to place a single crochet increase into the next stitch. There's our first, and there's our second. And now we're going to start our pattern that we'll be repeating around this, the piece for this round. And that's 1 single crochet into the first and second stitch, followed by a single crochet increase into the next stitch. So again, that's 1 single crochet into the first stitch, 1 single crochet into the next, and a single crochet increase into the next stitch. We're going to repeat this pattern around until we have 1 stitch left to be worked. Right, so I have 1 stitch left in this round to work, and we're going to place 1 single crochet into that last stitch. And now at the end of round 4, I should have 24 single crochets. And at this point, I recommend taking some time to measure your gauge. To do that, you will lay your piece flat on a flat, hard surface like this. And you're going to take your tape measure and you're going to measure from that front loop there. You're going to measure to this front loop here on the widest part of your piece. So I'd like to make sure that I'm right where my working yarn is, because I'll know that that is the widest part on that side from this side. And then I'm going to take my tape measure, measure it across, and at this point, your piece should measure 1.5 inches across. Okay. If you've been matching gauge for your dolls this whole way, then this is a crucial step to making sure that your boots will fit your doll. If you haven't been matching gauge, I just recommend that you maintain the same tension and ideally use the same yarn throughout that you have been using throughout the project. Ideally the same yarn line to help compensate for any changes in gauge that you might be encountering from week to week. So now that we've checked our gauge, we are ready to move on to round 5. So we're going to remove this stitch marker, and then we're going to work 1 single crochet into each stitch around, but we're going to do the front loop only single crochet. So to do that, we're going to move our project so we can see the V's on top. And this loop here that's closest to is the front loop only. So we're going to insert a hook up and under that front loop, and we're just going to pick up just that loop, and then we're going to single crochet. We're going to put our stitch marker into that completed stitch. And then we're going to repeat that all the way around. So again, picking up that front loop and single crochet. Picking up the front loop and single crochet. You're not going to add or lose any stitches in this round. So at the end of this round, you should still have those 24 single crochet stitches. So I just finished my last stitch of round 5 working in the front loop only. Now before I move on to round 6, what we're going to do is we're going to join our last stitch to our first stitch with a slip stitch. And we're working under both loops of that stitch. We're going to continue to mark that front or that first stitch here. So let me just put this in here. And we're ready to continue working. So we're going to chain up 1 from this point, and we're going to turn our work. And we're going to be working in turned rows for the next 2 rounds. So for round 6, we're going to place 1 single crochet into each stitch around. So now that I have 1 single crochet into each stitch around for this round, I'm going to join my last stitch to my first stitch with a slip stitch. So again, we're inserting under both of those loops, yarning over, pulling up a loop, and then pulling that through the loop on your hook already. And that's your slip stitch completed. We're going to chain up 1, and then we're going to turn our work. I like to mark the first stitch of the round with a stitch marker before I continue working, because sometimes, especially when you're working in all one color, you can sometimes pick up or lose stitches when you see this slip stitch addition in there. So it's always handy to have that that stitch marker either in the first or the last stitch, just to help you keep track of that and help you not have to continuously count your stitches every round. Because as long as you've hit that last stitch here with the stitch marker, you know you've got all of the stitches you need. So I've got my chain 1, I'm turning my work, and for round 7, we're just going to do the same thing we did for round 6, and we're going to place 1 single crochet into each stitch around. At the end of this round, we're also going to do another slip stitch join as we just did. So when you get to the end of the round, you can join your last stitch to your first stitch with a slip stitch. So I'm going to finish this up, and I'll meet you back here when we do our join, and then I'll give the instructions for moving on to the rest of the boot. So I just did my last stitch of round 7, and I'm going to insert my hook into the first stitch of the round, and I'm going to slip stitch to join. And then I'm going to chain up 1 and turn my work. And I'm just going to slip that stitch marker in there so I know where my round ends. So I'm going to turn my work. And then for round 8, we're going to place 1 single crochet into each of the first 6 stitches. So there's our first stitch, And now that we have done one single crochet into each of the first 6 stitches, we're going to do 6 single crochet decreases. Now, usually when you would want to do an invisible decrease when you're doing amigurumi, but because we have the wrong side facing us, we're just going to do a normal single crochet decrease, because if we did the front loops only like we do in the invisible decrease, we'd have these back loops sticking out on the front of our work, and we don't want that. We want to have a nice smooth front. So we're just going to insert our hook under the first loop, yarn over, pull up a loop, insert our hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And that's your single crochet decrease completed. And we're going to do that 5 more times. So insert, yarn over, pull up, insert into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up, and then we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3. And there's our second single crochet decrease. There's 3, 4, 5, and our last one is 6. And now we'll place 1 single crochet into each of the remaining 6 stitches. And there is our last stitch. Now at this point, we're not going to be joining our work. We're going to continue working in turned unjoined rows for the rest of the project. So for row 9, we're going to chain up 1 and turn our work. And then we're going to place 1 single crochet into each stitch across. At the end of this round, you should have 18 single crochet stitches. And so now we're at the end of round 9, and we're, as I had mentioned previously, we're not joining our rounds anymore. We're working in unjoined rounds. So we're going to chain up 1 and turn our work in preparation for row 10. For rows 10 through 16, we're going to repeat what we've done for row 9. We're going to chain up 1, turn our work, and place 1 single crochet into each stitch around. You should not have any changes in stitch count. You should always have 18 single crochet stitches. So if you'd like to pause your video and meet me back here when you're ready to start with row 17, I'll show you how we will be finishing off our boots in row 17. So I'll finish this up and I'll meet you back here in just a moment. So I just finished my last stitch of round 16 and I'm ready to start row 17 for my boot. And to do that, I'm going to chain up 6. So yarn over, pull through. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I'm going to turn my work. Now I'm going to skip these 6 chains and I'm going to place 1 single crochet into the first stitch. And now this chain 6 will become our buttonhole, which will help secure the boots onto the doll. And to finish this round, we're going to place 1 single crochet into each stitch across. And now I want to also mention that the right side or the outside of the boots should be facing you at this point. If you have the other side facing you, you can either add or subtract a round to your boot if potentially you've lost track of your single crochet rows, because we want to have the right side facing us when we are doing this last round. So I just did my last stitch of the round and I'm going to finish off by cutting my yarn, and I'm going to pull that through the loop there, and my boot is complete. Now, to finish off your boot, you're going to need your sewing thread and your needle, and your button. Now, again, with the right side facing you, and imagine that I've already woven this end in, you'll take your boots and you'll find the point at the back of the boot where your chain 6 space meets the opposite side of your boot. And then you'll take your needle and thread and sew your button onto the opposite side. Okay. And I like to do mine right on the edge here because the boots will be a little snug when you first put them on. And that way you've got a little bit of stretch at the top. But like I said, just sew your needle and thread here in the opposite corner to your chain 6 space. and that is your completed boot. Now, to make another boot, you'll need to pause the video and rewind it to the beginning because you will need 2 boots for your doll. And that's how you make a cute pair of doll boots. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and please consider subscribing to this channel. If you have any comments or questions, I would love to hear from you and I'll help you in any way that I can. So please leave those in the comment section below. If you enjoy free crochet patterns, please check out my blog, theloopylamb.com. Thanks so much for watching, friends. Happy hooking, and I'll see you next time.